Welcome to Scott Pilgrim versus the podcast, a podcast where we absolutely destroy Scott Pilgrim. And we got double the chances this episode to destroy Scott because there's two Scott, two Pilgrim in this episode. That's the name.
Too fast, two furs.
Oh, is that what it's a reference to?
That's a reference. That's making a lot of sense.
I didn't get that.
That's
I
cool.
don't really watch those movies. But I do watch Scott Pilgrim Takes Off episode 7. If you haven't, on Netflix, go watch it. We are going to spoil the heck out of it. But we're finally getting some big answers here as we catch up with Scott after he was taken through a portal during his fight with Matthew Patel. Turns out it was by old Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, the classic.
That's
old
the
Scott.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Sorry,
Mega
it's
Scott. It's old Scott.
Old Scott, which is even the ultimate neg is being old, as we all know. Is Too Fast, Too Furious the one where the cars turn into GoBots?
Nope.
Mm-hmm.
No.
It's Tyrese definitely turns into a car in that movie. I know that for a fact.
Like Vin Diesel gets wet and he turns into a car?
No, I mean,
a bunch of cars start popping out of his back.
If you really want to know, it's famous for they did this move
like a
where they jumped a car and it landed in a boat.
That's not possible. Cars don't go on boats. They're different species.
Different
if you drive it too fast, it will.
Wow.
That's like a boat on a train. I don't know why you would do that. Anyway, old Scott Pilgrim kidnapped
I'm
Scott.
Justin.
All right, we forgot to say our names. I'm Alex.
I'm Pete.
Wow. We're hepped up this episode because we're excited to talk about it. And we find out that much like a lot of the world, Scott Pilgrim is a hater of the Scott Pilgrim series. He has finally, he is the one who defeated Scott Pilgrim by taking Scott Pilgrim out of the timeline to the future, and we get to see what Scott's life is down the road. By the end of the episode, Scott has traveled back thanks to older Ramona. She's actually called something different. She's not called older Ramona. She's called Future Ramona Flowers. There you go.
Yeah.
But I will say,
I have a feeling I know what you called her. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say it was really nice that this thing we've all been feeling over the course of the show that Mary Elizabeth Winstead is too old to play Ramona Flowers.
God,
we finally got payoff for that. It was a question we had in the first episode, and here it paid off. And it finally made sense why they got a lady that, like, I don't know if she's got bones anymore. It's just dust and bags of withered old flesh, you know?
You're an awful person.
I actually found her voice to be too young when she was in the future. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Didn't work for you?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I'm just kidding. It's fantastic.
When she and Ewan McGregor got married, I don't know if you know this, in their vows, he was like, till death do us part, granted you're already there, lady, is what he said. And she was like, whoa, leave me alone.
All right, let's start talking about the start of this episode, all right? We get the old kind of time travel trope, which, you know, could make you groan. It could be like, oh no, a time travel episode. But I thought it was really fun the way it kind of explained a lot of things. And I really loved all the fun Easter eggs. It gets real meta. It comments on the movie as well as different iterations, which I thought was really smart. I mean, I love doing the, Nintendo code to get into the VR room. I mean, that was on top of a huge Game Boy. That was amazing.
What was the code for? Did you have a...
Well, it wasn't. It's not Contra. It wasn't like up,
it wasn't
down,
the
down.
Konami code.
Yeah.
I believe it was the code for a Hadouken in Street Fighter.
Ooh.
That's what that codes. It's not really a code. It's just like the move.
Yeah. What buttons to push?
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know what code that was because I don't play video games like you.
Yeah, but you did do a sketch about where the whole premise was doing a Hadouken at kind of the end.
I didn't know what we were doing. We were just writing down words, And then we went back Then we went back to sports, our favorite thing. Anyway, I really like the emotional theme of this episode. I thought this was a smart way to pay off here. They do cop to the fact that a lot of the plot and the motivations don't make sense, both for Ramona. We find out that Future Ramona is the one who wrote the script in order to send a message to Scott to write the timeline or something like that. She doesn't even really know. But old Scott Pilgrim's motivation here basically being like, this all went wrong in the original story and walking us through that and showing that, I thought that's a very palpable emotional resonance of like, you hit a bad patch in your life, you look back at all the points where things possibly went wrong, and you try to erase potentially even the good stuff as well. I thought that was really well done. It parallels also what's going on with Wallace in this episode, who is estranged from his husband, who has the dream job of working for Nintendo.
Oh my God, that was funny.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this whole series, and especially this episode, is just like folding different aspects of Scott Pilgrim in on itself. And we get that here with this really funny flip of like, no, this story's wrong. Meaning the story where he beats the exes, the story that we all know is right, or we all thought was right when we first started watching this series. And this criticism of the series being, this isn't what we expected at all. This is different. So like just a fun flip there. And then to your point, the deeper emotional resonance, you know, Scott like famously needed to mature in all of the iterations of him. And in this older Scott, same thing. Like he's like, one thing went wrong, I'm destroying all of this. It's like treating life like a video game where you fall in one pit and you have to go all the way back to your last save point. When in reality, you just need to sort of work from the position you're in, which I think is perhaps the underlying message.
I want to go back to something that we talk about a lot when we're talking about this show, and that's the actors. Having Will Forte be the voice here was such a fun, as soon as he started talking, it was like, that is so cool, such a fun choice. And really, I think just brought the whole thing to another level. I mean, the casting overall, we said, is just bananas, but that was just such a fun moment where I was like, oh my God, this is great.
Between Last Man on Earth and Dad and Sweet Tooth, Will Forte is really like narrowing his roles to like apocalypse father figure in a funny way.
He's great. I agree with you 100%, Pete. He's just a naturally funny actor and voice actor. So this is another case of a character that it feels like they just kind of wrote for him a little bit. Like this doesn't even feel like Scott so much as it's Will Forte as old Scott. That's 100%. Cool because it's very funny the entire time.
The beard appreciation was really nice.
There was one thing I wanted to bring up though, just on the thing about Scott being emotionally stilted, like you were talking about, Justin. I think what this does here, which I also thought was a very interesting move, is it matures the, if you want to call him real Scott, the prime Scott, the younger Scott, because we get that scene towards the end of the episode where he apologizes to Knives for everything and owns it, which is a little writerly. It's a little like Bradley O'Malley hearing the same thing over and over again for 13 years. But I think it still works because Scott has actually taken away something from this experience, which normally he's just a blank slate, or it takes him far too long to get these messages.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that worked too, especially because this show is so meta. There's just an ongoing meta narrative constantly. Right from the book where they comment on the fact that they're in a book, like, oh, you won't find that out for a couple more pages, that kind of stuff. So there's all of that. So this makes sense that this move is a little bit telegraphed by the world's criticism of Scott Pilgrim. But also so much of this first season has been about other forms of this story also. Like we get the musical in this episode, we get the movie from this alternate movie, the movie script. We've seen it in so many formats, and they seem to be sort of self-deprecating or commenting anyway on the fact that they keep telling the same story over and over again. I think it makes sense as a theme.
Yeah, on the meta front, I think you're absolutely right there. The idea of, again, Bradley O'Malley probably been presented over the past decade and a half with, hey, are you going to make this into an anime? Are you going to make this into a musical? Are you going to make this into another movie, a TV show, whatever, et cetera, et cetera? So like you're saying, they keep drilling down on the same story over and over again, which plays back to that theme here of old Scott is stuck in the same story. That's what he's stuck on. He's watching it not through the virtual boy, but through the virtual guy. And the presumption is that he just watches this dinky story all the time and never got past it. But again, I love the move that like Ramona through this story, the way that we've watched her has progressed quite a bit. Scott is starting to progress. They talk about this in terms of the alternate timeline when he gets to see everything. And the X's have progressed as well. Like everybody is actually growing except for old Scott here, who is stuck.
Yeah, I think while we're talking about old Scott, I really think it's a funny kind of thing to see Scott stuck, because the band that he's with the Twins is hilarious. That whole music video is just really hysterical. And the fact that like I was like, oh my God, please tell me he still lives with Wallace, and that was just such a fun bit and callback. I just think they were really kind of having fun with it.
Yeah, they definitely were. And one thing I want to say before we get too far away, this really gave me Adventure Time vibes, especially at the beginning. A show that I love, and in their bigger or larger format episodes, especially as it went on, their big mythology episodes, felt right next to this, down to even like the joke of memories, good memories with the good crossed out. Yeah, as a fun thing. Honestly, honeymoon in Florida, whew, that's great.
Yeah, I really loved how sweet it was for the younger Scott to kind of look at this, and then the kind of like him defending the present Ramona to future Ramona was fun. I was wondering if they were going to do a creative way with future Ramona with the hair bit, because that's something we didn't get in this episode that we've had in every episode, since you guys talk about structure, but we didn't get that kind of fun credit of her changing her hair color in this episode.
Well, this is definitely format-wise. You're flipping over to Scott and filling in all of the blanks there, so I understand why we didn't get that. But that brings up something else I wanted to mention based off of the discussion we're having. Do you feel like future Ramona is also stuck? Because I was surprised that she's still a delivery girl after all these years.
Yeah, but did you see those rollerblades, though? I mean, come on, DeLorean rollerblades?
I will say she was crushing it.
Yeah, she was.
But I'm curious, was she delivering Netflix streams to people? Like, what's her delivery thing?
Seems like a lot of different kinds of packages, more of an Amazon situation.
Don't say that.
I don't know. I mean, not that we needed more on her necessarily, but I feel like surprisingly Ramona was the character who got the shorter shrift in this episode, just because we turned the focus so squarely away from her. But we'll see how that affects, particularly with the twist at the end that they can't kiss each other.
Yeah, that was fun. But her saying that like Scott was the love of her life was very sweet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh. Well, and I think I agree she is stuck in that Scott's being stuck sort of made her stuck, or at least stayed in this position. I don't know if she's as trapped as him. She just seems sort of like settled into this life. But it does sort of position them as like true love for each other. It just wasn't working out at that time.
Yeah. Just to get back to the honeymoon thing, I did want to ask Pete, were you excited after all of this time to finally see some Minions on this show?
Oh yeah, I'm glad that they, played a little homage. Yeah, I mean,
you love them.
You do. No, you love them, and you love their da-na-nas.
Anyways, I do think that it was really the fun slides and then the animation commentary, like, oh, whoever did the animation for the second part is really bad. So that I thought that was also really fun and meta.
Mm-hmm. That was great. I just did actually want to follow up the Minions line with one of my favorite lines of the episode when he's talking about they went to their honeymoon to Universal Studios, and he says, "I met Optimus Prime. Optimus fucking Prime." Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that's how I felt the first time I went to Universal. So I saw myself.
Yeah, it made it worth it.
It totally did. That Transformers ride, first of all, great. Really good. The best thing that came out of the whole Michael Bay Transformers. And there's a moment at the end where the 3D Optimus Prime gets in front of your car, looks at you, and is basically like, "I'm proud of you, son. You're a wonderful son to me. I am your dad." And you're like,
wow. And all the 40-plus-year-old men cry.
Yeah, I legitimately got teary-eyed at the end of the Transformers ride at Universal Studios. So wow. I know how old Scott Pilgrim's feeling, man.
And he transforms into the airplane, right? Or the
no, he transforms back into Tyrese Gibson.
Oh wow, cool! Wow, what
transforms into a truck, man. Transform and roll out.
Truck, is that like a land boat?
This hurts my childhood.
That's the way I say it. Hey, the next land host here. Better pick up my package from Ramona.
Can we talk about a huge revelation in this episode that I don't think, unless I'm forgetting, that we've gotten in any previous episodes or any aspects of Scott Pilgrim? So this is about the twins. And I think Scott is like, wait, didn't you battle all of the evil exes and kill them? And he's like, yeah, well, after they respawned at home. And then they kind of move on from there. So in this world, after people die from the fighting and they leave their coins, they respawn back to their home, I guess. Maybe just the twins, maybe everybody.
That's fun.
That's nice. So it's not
They don't
murder.
die. Yeah, they're not murdering
No,
people.
I know. It totally makes sense in the world. It just kind of floored me to casually throw in this bit of information, which is a very Scott Pilgrim thing to do, mind you. That's like important to, how people are relating to each other.
Can I tell you what I thought you were going to say with that setup you made?
Oh, sure. You're going to go back to the Minions?
No, I thought you were freaked out by the revelation that Columbo and Pikachu are the same person.
That was a good joke as well. I was
That
going
was
to
a
say
good
That
joke.
was a good joke. Like
was a
that
good
famous
joke.
detective, Pikachu. Good.
Yeah, I was going to say
It was
Detective
collect-
Pikachu. but
Columbo? No, I was talking about Pikachu.
yes.
How about the fact that Ramona was the one writing the script?
Well, if she was there, she should be able to write it.
That gets over a little logical problem that I've been having with the theory about Scott being the one who's writing the script, because the idea of Scott trying to write anything just does not work for me. Thinking about like his mental level in terms of being able to do that. Ramona being able to write a script, that works. Wallace could probably do it as well, not Scott. But it sounds like maybe you're a little iffy on it, Justin.
No, I liked it. I thought again, it reinforces their connection in a way that I thought was nice and sort of gives, she's still making a case, I think, for their relationship, even though it's very underplayed in this episode.
I also love the
future
joke
versions.
of young Neil writing a book about it, and now he's credited as old young Neil. Very funny.
Yeah.
My,
oh my God.
My Precious Big Life by Old Young Neil. It's very
That's
fun.
good. That's really good.
Great stuff. What else about
The fact that he's in the purse again was really great.
Mm-hmm.
You love that.
It's a
I
fun
love
bit.
that. Yeah.
You guys both love that. I think it's fine, but it's just funny how much you're like, he's back in the purse.
It's really cute. It's
Get in that
adorable.
purse.
Just like his
adorable.
face sticking out of there.
Yeah, it's
Very
funny.
fun. The
It's a
shot
funny
at the
bit.
end of
It's a funny
everybody
bit.
being like, come on, it's time for the big finale. And it's just his tiny face coming out of the purse. Very fun.
I also like
all
how Future Scott called regular Scott knives because he got all starry-eyed and was like, ooh, look at this. He was like, what are you, knives? And I thought that was a cool, like, he still thinks about knives or knows about knives. So the setting up later, it made it even better for me, I thought.
Well, and I think that also ties into the whole idea that this old Scott Pilgrim has never gotten past what happened to him in his 20s. He's never gotten past the original graphic novels.
It's hard to move on.
It is hard to move on.
Says the man surrounded by thousands of comic books.
I'm not grabbing onto my younger days for dear life.
It's
What are
hard
you
to grow
talking
up.
about?
It's hard to grow up.
Yeah. Good thing that was pointed out by the guy who is doing a Scott Pilgrim podcast right now.
Fair. Is that me or is that you?
I don't know.
We're all just looking in the
man.
mirror.
I think it's Too Fast, Too Furious for you boys.
Ooh, I still don't know what
nice.
that means, but all right. I guess what I was saying, though, about the old Scott Pilgrim thing is he's somebody, like we've been talking about, I think hasn't moved past the original graphic novels, but also similar to he's a fan of them. Like he watches them in different forms and he talks about them and thinks about them. And it's the same thing as fans just being obsessed with the same thing 13 years ago. I will say, just to throw out there, I do wonder how much of that is something Brian Lee O'Malley feels as well. Because, as a creator, we've talked about this, and I don't fault him. Obviously, he should do whatever he wants and follow his muse and wherever he wants to go. But he's done Scott Pilgrim repeatedly over the years. He did Snot Girl and he did Seconds, and that's pretty much it over the intervening time.
Yeah.
And we are a society that certainly judges people in terms of their output. So maybe there's a little bit of his anxiety in terms of the constant world being like, what's your next thing? When is your next thing coming? When are you going to do the
Yeah.
next thing? And he's like, no, I'm back on this thing. I'm back on that thing. That's where my comfort zone is. So I don't know.
Well, and also the idea that you can take that thing and create within it. Like he's been able to, which is sort of the future for so much of creation. Like people don't want you to just start over and over again. They want you to just stay in something and build it out, or that's what people are doing any which way. And I think this show is a testament to that. Does work sometimes. This show, I feel like, has taken more creative swings than most other shows, and having the sort of safety of it being in an already popular IP world, I think, helps that.
Yeah, I mean, at one point, Scott is playing a robot in the show. You know what I mean? Like that whole bit where he's working the robot as he's trying to run. It was just such a hilarious thing.
There's a lot of that whole time travel thing is, I think, purposefully confusing with Robot 01, that he exists in all timelines simultaneously. Just kind of an unnecessary take on time travel that makes it confusing, but is played for comedy, so it's okay.
It's a different take on time travel that used to be sort of, it's a more like fiction, like literary fiction version of time travel, I feel like, which I thought was a funny twist on it. So I was on board for it.
Yeah. I liked all the stickers on the robot.
Yes, fun. A couple of other things to call out. I'm completely blanking on the name. Justin, I know you're playing Super Mario right now, so maybe you remember, but there's a statue of the cactus guy from Mario is in the front of Wallace's house, which I thought was fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun.
Guy.
Yeah, because his husband works for Nintendo.
It makes a lot of sense. I don't know that guy's name, but maybe it'll come to me.
The callback to Sonic the Hedgehog for the first episode is also fun with the both
Pokey. It's Pokey.
Pokey, with both of the Scots jumping in to be like, it's like Sonic the Hedgehog. Is great. I also love the callback to emotional business. Can I get a witness? Just
my God, so funny.
Very stupid running joke song thing. And I loved at the end, the opening of Scott Pilgrim's precious little musical, that they're advertising it as with all 7 evil exes in person, because everybody knows about this because it's popular in the culture now. So very fun.
And Wallace singing Complicated, I thought was fun.
Yeah.
And Todd eating a turkey leg. He's off.
He's off.
I do want to mention about the Wallace stuff. Surprisingly emotional given the small amount of screen time. I don't know if you guys felt like that, but I assume at least part of that was how Kieran Culkin was doing the voice stuff, but it was really sad, and I wanted him to get back together with his husband, even though we never meet the husband. It's a very small part of the episode. I felt like little pangs while I was watching it.
Oh, pangs?
Pangs, hunger pangs. I was hungry for that turkey leg. Gimme.
I did like how everybody got like a fun entrance at the kind of big screening.
And now we're setting up for the grand finale next ep. Guys, I've been waiting so long.
So what's your speculation? What's your theories here on the finale then? Scott and Ramona can't kiss. Who did it? Per the last episode's title. Who did it?
Make them not kiss? Well, I mean, you got 2 major contenders here. You've got Goose, right?
Gordon Goose.
What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? Goose?
What do you think, Pete?
I think I'm waiting for the whole list here.
Do both of them and give him a choice.
Matthew Patel is the other.
Okay. Oh, that's it? Gordon Goose or Matthew Patel?
I said 2 choices.
Oh, okay. All right. Pete, what do you think? Gordon Goose, Matthew Patel, a third choice?
Is that really the only ones that, I mean, it still could be...
To me, they are. There seem to be the 2 major, like, open-ended X's.
We still haven't gotten a lot of time with the twins. They seem pretty fun in this episode, but that's...
Also, Robot 1 could be behind some stuff.
Actually evil.
Yeah. I feel like Robot 1 was pretty well explained in this episode as Scott watching all of the past from the future. So I don't know. I mean, Gordon Goose is definitely the one that feels like he set up. He said, "I have more to do here." Almost literally those words. So Could be part of it. Maybe he's trying to get back. But Matthew Patel seems to have the most to lose because he has been powered up by this and doesn't want anything to change.
I guess we'll have to see. We'll see if we'll finally defeat Scott Pilgrim. I'll say this. We didn't take down either Scott Pilgrim this episode, but we definitely crushed the Fast and Furious series. I think that is done for after this, to be honest. But if you want to support
that may be true.
Yeah,
that may be true.
I don't know. We'll see.
My long shot candidate for who's behind it, a character from the comics that has never been introduced here, Lisa.
Oh,
Scott's
Lisa Miller.
Evil Ex.
Yeah.
Scott's Evil Ex.
Could happen. Or Envy.
Set up for season 2.
Envy, yeah.
Set up for season 2, Scott's Exes.
We will find out very soon. In the meantime, if you'd like to support this podcast and all the podcasts we do, patreon.com/comic book club. Also, we do a live show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. to Facebook and YouTube. Come hang out. We would love to chat with you about Scott Pilgrim. Apple, Spotify, Android, or the app of your choice to subscribe, listen, and follow the show at Comic Book Live on Twitter/X, Comic Book Club Live on TikTok and Instagram, comicbookclublive.com for this podcast and many more. And one more shot to take down Scott Pilgrim before the show ends.
We're
gonna do it.
For now.
We're going to do it. Get your turkey legs, boys.
Last up.
Power up.